The moment Caleb Weston walked through the revolving doors of the Grand Meridian Hotel in downtown Chicago, nobody looked up. That was the thing about Caleb. He didn't demand attention when he entered a room. At 41, he was the kind of man who could stand in a crowd of suits and look like the one who had wandered in from somewhere else. He wasn't disheveled exactly. His dark jeans were clean. His navy pullover was well fitted. His sneakers, white, low-cut, the kind sold at any department store for $40, were spotless. He carried no briefcase, no luggage, just a single worn leather satchel slung across one shoulder. His face was calm in the way that people who have nothing left to prove tend to be calm, not bored, not disengaged, just still. He had driven himself from O'Hare. No car service, no assistant, waiting at arrivals. He'd parked in the hotel garage and taken the elevator up alone. He liked it that way. The lobby of the Grand Meridian was everything the hotel's website promised. Soaring ceilings, marble floors the color of cream, a floral arrangement in the center that cost more than most people's monthly rent. It was a place that took itself very seriously, and in return, it expected its guests to look the part. Caleb Weston did not look the part. He approached the front desk at 2:15 on a Thursday afternoon. There were 3 agents stationed behind the long, polished counter. 2 of them were already engaged with guests, a couple in matching linen jackets checking in for their anniversary trip, and a man in a charcoal suit who kept glancing at his phone while an agent processed his paperwork. The 3rd agent was standing free, her eyes scanning the lobby. She looked directly at Caleb, then she looked past him. He waited. He was patient. He set his satchel down at his feet and clasped his hands in front of him and waited. The agent, her nameplate read Courtney, continued to scan the lobby behind him. A woman in a white blazer walked in from the direction of the restaurant, and Courtney's posture shifted immediately, brightening, her hands coming up to the keyboard. But the woman in the white blazer veered toward the elevators without stopping, and Courtney's expression reset. She looked at Caleb again. This time she walked over, not with the kind of brisk professionalism that good hotel service requires, but slowly, the way you approach something you're not entirely sure belongs to you. "Can I help you?" she said. Not "welcome to the Grand Meridian," not "good afternoon." Just the 4 words, flat and slightly upward at the end, more question than greeting. "I have a reservation," Caleb said. His voice was even. "Weston, Caleb Weston." Courtney turned to her screen and typed. Her fingers moved quickly at first, then slowed. She tilted her head. "Weston," she repeated, as if she wasn't sure she'd heard him correctly. "That's right." She typed again. Then she stopped typing and simply looked at the screen for a moment without saying anything. Caleb had been through enough check-ins to know what that pause meant. It meant she had found the reservation. It meant what she found had surprised her. "I'm seeing a reservation here," she said slowly, "for the Meridian Suite." "Yes," Caleb said. "That's," she cleared her throat. "That's our flagship suite. Top floor." "I know," Caleb said. "I've stayed there before." Courtney looked at him again, not at his face, at him, at the pullover, the jeans, the $40 sneakers, at the absence of a visible entourage, a luxury car pulling up outside, a woman in heels on his arm. She was doing the math that people like Courtney did automatically, without even meaning to. The math that measured a person's belonging by the visible sum of their appearance. The math was not adding up for her. "Sir," she said. And there was something different in her voice now, something that had stiffened slightly. "The Meridian Suite is currently occupied through tonight. The previous guest's checkout was extended." Caleb looked at her. "I have a confirmed reservation," he said. "I received a confirmation email this morning. I understand that, sir. I'm just saying there may be a conflict with the current occupancy. I'll need to speak with my manager." "Okay," Caleb said. "I'll wait." He stood at the counter. He did not pull out his phone. He did not shift his weight or sigh or drum his fingers on the marble. He simply stood, the way people stand when they have decided they are not going anywhere. Courtney picked up the phone behind the counter and spoke in a low voice, her body turned slightly away from him. He caught fragments. Reservation in the system. Meridian Suite, yes, I understand. I know, but, a pause. He says it's confirmed. She hung up and turned back. My manager is on her way, Courtney said. If you'd like to take a seat in the lobby. I'm fine here, Caleb said. Another pause. Of course. The manager arrived in 4 minutes. Her name was Sandra Phelps, mid-50s, the kind of woman who had spent 30 years in hospitality and wore her authority the way other people wore expensive coats, habitually and with total comfort. She walked toward Caleb with her hands clasped in front of her and a smile that was professional without being warm. Mr. Weston, she said, I'm Sandra Phelps, the general manager on duty today. I understand there's been some confusion about your reservation. There's no confusion on my end, Caleb said pleasantly. I booked the Meridian Suite 3 weeks ago. I confirmed this morning. I'm here to check in. Sandra Phelps nodded slowly as if she were considering something. I completely understand. Unfortunately, we've had a situation with our current occupant in the suite, a very valued long-term guest who has needed to extend their stay. We're in the process of resolving that. In the meantime, I'd be happy to offer you one of our premier rooms on the 14th floor at no charge while we... I didn't book a premier room, Caleb said. No, I understand. But given the circumstances... What are the circumstances? Sandra stopped. I'm sorry. You said you're dealing with a situation. I'm asking what that situation is, specifically. A small silence. Sandra's smile remained precisely in place, but something behind it recalibrated. Our current guest in the Meridian Suite has experienced a personal matter that has required them to extend their checkout. We have a policy of accommodating long-term. Is that policy in your terms and conditions? Aye. It's standard hospitality practice too. Because, Caleb said, unhurrying, his voice carrying no edge, your standard terms and conditions say confirmed reservations are guaranteed up to the date of arrival. I have a confirmation number. Would you like me to show you the email? He reached into his satchel and produced his phone. Not dramatically, just as a man retrieving a document. Sandra Phelps looked at the email. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I hear you, Mr. Weston, and I want to make this right. What I can offer you is the suite available or not? A longer pause this time. The current occupant is checking out at 4, Sandra said. If you could wait 2 hours in our lounge, we'd have the suite ready. It's a 2:15, Caleb said. I'll wait 45 minutes. At 3 o'clock, I'd like to be checked in. Sandra Phelps blinked. She had not expected that. She had expected, Caleb knew, what people always expected when they offered a substitution to someone who looked like him. Compliance, gratitude even, for the alternative. She had not expected him to negotiate the timeline with the quiet assurance of a man who had negotiated far larger things than this. I'll see what I can do, she said. Thank you, Caleb said, and he picked up his satchel and walked to a chair in the lobby and sat down. He checked his email. He responded to 2 messages from his chief financial officer. He texted his daughter back in Atlanta to let her know he had arrived safely. He ordered a sparkling water from a passing server, who brought it without acknowledging who he was or why he was sitting there, which suited him fine. At 2 minutes to 3, Courtney appeared from behind the front desk and walked toward him. He watched her coming. Her face had changed. Not entirely. She still carried the practiced smoothness of a hospitality professional. But something in it had gone softer and something else had gone uncertain. The way a person looks when they have just been told something they wish they hadn't been told. Mr. Weston, she said, stopping in front of him. Your suite is ready. If you'll follow me. She led him not toward the regular elevators, but toward the private elevator at the end of the lobby. The one reserved for penthouse and suite guests, tucked behind a discreet alcove and requiring a key card to operate. As they walked past the front desk, Caleb noticed the second agent, a young man named Travis based on his nameplate, watching them with poorly concealed curiosity. The elevator arrived. As they stepped inside, Sandra Phelps reappeared from the direction of her office. She was walking quickly. She reached the elevator just as the doors were about to close and put her hand out to stop them. "Mr. Weston," she said, stepping inside, "I want to personally escort you to the suite and ensure everything is to your satisfaction." Her voice was different now, not dramatically so. She was too experienced for that, but the stiffness was gone. It had been replaced by something that was trying very hard to look like warmth. Caleb looked at her calmly. "That's not necessary," he said. "I insist," Sandra said, and she smiled. And the smile was the kind that asked to be forgiven for something without naming what the something was. Caleb let it go. He pressed the button for the top floor. The suite was, as it had always been, exceptional. 1,600 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, the city spreading out below like a circuit board lit from within. The bedroom had a California king. The bathroom had a soaking tub and a separate rain shower. The living room had a grand piano that nobody was expected to play, but that lent the room a particular weight, a declaration that this was a space where things of consequence happened. Sandra moved through the rooms with Caleb, pointing out amenities with the manner of a docent in a museum she was suddenly very proud of. The in-suite bar, fully stocked. The terrace, now accessible since the weather had turned. The concierge line, available 24 hours. At the door, she turned to him. "Mr. Weston, I want to apologize for the delay earlier. It was not. It did not reflect the standard of service we hold ourselves to at the Grand Meridian, and I want you to know that your comfort is our absolute priority." Caleb looked at her for a moment. "Mrs. Phelps," he said, "if a guest had come in here today in a different kind of outfit, a suit, let's say, or a cashmere coat, do you think there would have been any delay?" Sandra's mouth opened and then closed. "Because I've been a guest in this suite 4 times in the last 2 years, Caleb continued. "The reservation is in my name. The confirmation was in my inbox. The only thing different today was what I was wearing when I walked through the door. A long quiet. "You're right," Sandra said finally. She said it simply, without decoration. "That's not acceptable." "No," Caleb agreed. "It's not." He thanked her, and she left and he closed the door. He stood at the window for a while, looking at the lake. The water was grey-green and wide, the kind of horizon that reminded you the world was bigger than the room you were standing in. He thought about what he had not told Sandra Phelps, the thing that Courtney had found on her screen when she pulled up the reservation and gone suddenly, visibly still. He had not told her that Caleb Weston was the founder and chief executive officer of Weston Capital Group, one of the largest black-owned private equity firms in the country, with a portfolio valued at just under $4 billion. He had not mentioned that the Grand Meridian's parent company, Whitmore Hospitality Group, was currently under a proposed acquisition review, that Weston Capital Group had initiated preliminary conversations with Whitmore's board 6 weeks ago. He had not said any of that. He didn't need to. He set his satchel on the console table. He opened his laptop. He had 3 calls that afternoon, including one at 5 o'clock with his general counsel to review the Whitmore due diligence report. He poured himself a glass of water from the carafe on the credenza and sat down at the desk in front of the window and began to work. His phone buzzed at 3:47. It was a text from his attorney, Danielle Marsh, who had been overseeing the Whitmore deal from the legal side. "Call me when you have a minute." Something came up. He called her. "So," Danielle said, and he could hear from the particular flatness of her voice that something had shifted. "I got a call this afternoon from a board member at Whitmore. Apparently word got back to them about what happened at check-in." Caleb said nothing. He was looking at the lake. "They're not happy," Danielle continued. "Not with the hotel. With themselves, I mean." "The board member," I won't say who, was apparently on the floor this afternoon for a separate matter, a board retreat or something. He saw the whole thing. He called me directly. That's unfortunate, Caleb said. It's more than unfortunate, Caleb. He told me the board is convening an emergency session tonight. They're going to launch an internal review of discriminatory incidents across all their properties. They've already pulled incident reports going back 4 years. Caleb was quiet for a moment. That's a significant response. There's more, Danielle said. He told me the board has been made aware of 2 prior complaints filed against this specific property in the last 18 months. Similar pattern. Guests of color being routed to different rooms, asked for additional identification, offered substitutions for their reserved accommodations. Nothing was ever escalated. And now? Now it's going to be escalated. They're bringing in an outside firm to conduct the review. And Sandra Phelps, the GM, she's been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. Caleb sat back in his chair. The board member also asked me to convey, Danielle said carefully, that Whitmore Hospitality Group remains fully committed to the acquisition conversations. In fact, he said, and I'm quoting here, that they hope what happened today demonstrates exactly why they need new leadership and new direction. Caleb Weston looked out at the water. He thought about the 45 minutes he had spent sitting in the lobby. He thought about the way Courtney had looked past him. He thought about Sandra Phelps and her clipboard smile, and the offer of a 14th floor room, as if that were a reasonable substitution for what he had booked. He thought about what Sandra had said at the end, the 2 quiet words, "You're right," and how much more those words had cost her than any apology speech would have. He thought, too, about something that sat less comfortably in his chest, a question he had not been able to put down since he walked through those lobby doors. What about the guest who didn't have a $4 billion portfolio waiting in the background? What about the man or woman who had saved for months to book a special trip, who had a confirmation number in their inbox and sneakers on their feet, and no leverage beyond the simple inarguable fact that they had paid for what they were owed? What happened to that person when the desk agent looked past them, and the manager offered a lesser room and there was no board member from the parent company standing nearby to witness it? That person, Caleb knew, went home with less than they deserved. That person filed a complaint that went nowhere. That person told the story to friends and family who believed them and a world that shrugged. He had thought about that person before. He thought about that person a lot. It was, in fact, part of why he had agreed to the acquisition conversation in the first place. He picked up his phone and called his chief of staff, a woman named Priya Okafor, who had worked with him for 11 years and who had, over that time, developed the ability to hear the exact quality of silence on his end of the line before he said anything, and know from it what kind of day it had been. "I need you to do something for me," he said. "Of course," Priya said. "Pull the complaint intake data for Whitmore properties going back 5 years. Not just the flagged ones, all of them. I want to know how many incidents were reported by guests of color, how many were investigated, and what the outcomes were." A brief pause. "You want this before the board meeting tonight?" "I want it before my call with legal at 5, Caleb said. "And Priya?" "Yes. I want it because of the people who didn't have a board member watching, not because of me." Another pause, shorter this time. "I understand," Priya said. He hung up. He stood, walked to the window, pressed his palm flat against the cool glass. 52 stories below, the city moved at its usual indifferent pace. Cabs and buses and pedestrians on the sidewalk who had no idea what had just happened in the lobby of this building. No idea that 4 years of buried complaints were about to be exhumed. No idea that the man standing at the glass in his $40 sneakers was about to have a not insignificant say in how one of the largest hotel groups in the country operated going forward. That was still the thing about Caleb. He didn't demand attention when he entered a room. He just changed what happened in it. The 5 o'clock call with legal ran long. Danielle had already received a formal communication from the Whitmore board requesting an expedited timeline on the acquisition review. The incident had not derailed the deal. If anything, as the board member had indicated, it had clarified for certain stakeholders exactly why outside involvement was necessary. There were people on that board who had been trying for 2 years to push through changes that internal bureaucracy kept stalling. Today had given them the kind of undeniable witnessed moment that was very hard to argue against in a boardroom. At 7, Caleb ordered dinner from room service. A grilled salmon, a side of roasted vegetables, sparkling water. He ate at the desk with his laptop open, reviewing the complaint data Priya had pulled. The numbers were not surprising. They were still hard to look at. Across 8 Whitmore properties over 5 years, there had been 214 complaints lodged by guests who identified as Black, Hispanic, or Asian American. Of those, 41 had been formally investigated. Of those 41, 9 had resulted in any documented disciplinary action. The rest had been resolved with refunds, apologies, or gift certificates. The hotel industry's preferred method of making a problem disappear without treating it as a problem. He read through the narratives attached to a selection of the complaints. A Black couple asked for additional photo identification at check-in despite having a confirmed booking. Other guests had not been asked. A Latina woman in her 60s offered a smoking room when she had booked non-smoking, told the hotel was full, then watched a white family check in to the non-smoking room 2 minutes later. A Black businessman in his 30s escorted out of the hotel bar by security, who claimed he didn't look like a guest. He was staying in a junior suite. Each of these people had done what they were supposed to do. They had booked their rooms. They had confirmed their reservations. They had arrived with their ID and their payment and their confirmation numbers, and they had been met with doubt. He closed the laptop at 8:30 and stood at the window one more time. The lake was dark now, invisible beyond the city lights. He thought about what tomorrow would bring. More calls, more documents. The slow, careful work of due diligence. He thought about what it would look like a year from now if the acquisition went through and the new policies he intended to push for were implemented across all Whitmore properties. Mandatory bias training, third-party complaint review, anonymous guest surveys with teeth, meaning consequences attached to patterns, not just words on a form. It wouldn't fix everything. He was not naive about that. Systems built on assumptions don't dismantle overnight, but they could be interrupted. They could be redirected. They could, with enough pressure, applied to the right points, be rebuilt into something that looked more like what they were supposed to have been in the first place. His phone buzzed one more time before he went to sleep. It was from a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't open it. Then he saw the first-line preview and stopped. Mr. Weston, my name is Gerald Stith. I was the board member present at the Meridian today. I wanted to reach out personally rather than through counsel. He opened the full message. I want you to know that I saw what happened at that desk. I want you to know that I have been trying to get my colleagues to take these incidents seriously for 3 years, and I have been told each time that the data doesn't support systemic concern. Today changed that conversation in a way that I was not able to change it myself. I'm grateful that you handled what happened with the dignity that you did. Though I am deeply sorry you were placed in the position of having to. I also want to say something that I recognize may be uncomfortable, but that I think needs to be said. The fact that your response had the effect it had is partly because of who you are. I know that. The 200 people in those complaints you'll see in the data did not have the same outcome. I hope whatever we build together does something to change that. Caleb read the message twice. He sat with it for a moment. Then he typed back, Mr. Stith, thank you for this. I've read the data. You're right about all of it. Let's talk tomorrow about what we can build. He set the phone on the nightstand. He looked at the ceiling of the Meridian suite in the dark. Outside, the city was still going, the way cities do. Constant, indifferent, lit. He thought about all the people who had checked into hotels that week, across the country, without incident, without a second glance, without a question about whether their reservation was real. He thought about the ones who hadn't. He thought about what it meant to have the power to do something, and the obligation not to squander it. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. He was looking forward to it.